The Mercy was orbiting a remote colony world far from the bustle of galactic wars. Its mission was simple: to provide medical aid and supplies to those in need. The crew of doctors and technicians were well accustomed to the slow pace of humanitarian work in a galaxy torn by conflict. Many of the wounded came from neighboring systems where battles raged, but the crew had always maintained their peacekeeping mission without fail. In their hearts they believed they were making a difference, and for once it felt as if there could be peace across the stars. They had no reason to suspect that their peaceful existence would be shattered by the arrival of something far darker. Without warning, an ominous shadow fell over the Mercy's hull. An enormous alien ship appeared on the radar. At first, it seemed like a glitch, a mistake, perhaps an unknown ship miscalculated its course. But soon it became clear this was no mistake. This was an attack. The alien vessel was massive, dark, and unyielding. Its design, sleek yet menacing, a cold, hard reflection of the species it represented. The Vraxians had arrived, and they had no intention of leaving survivors. The first explosion rocked the Mercy's side, throwing medical staff to the ground before alarms blared throughout the ship. Chaos erupted as the crew scrambled to react. Damage reports flooded in from every corner of the ship. Entire sections were crippled by the blast. Fires raged in the lower decks, while the medical team raced to save the injured and the dying. The ship's defense systems had been triggered, but they were outdated and ineffective against the raw power of the Vraxian weapons. The hospital ship had no shields, no military armament. It was a symbol of peace, not war. Seconds felt like hours as the Vraxian warship loomed over them, its weapons continuing to pound the Mercy mercilessly. The Vraxian fighters darted through space around the hospital ship, tearing apart anything in their path. The crew could only watch in disbelief as their ship was torn to pieces. What had once been a symbol of hope and healing was now little more than space debris drifting helplessly through the void. In the command center, the captain stood frozen, his mind racing for a solution, but none came. The Mercy had no means of defending itself, no escape route, and no way to contact their fleet. The crew could only do their best to tend to the wounded and prepare for the inevitable. The captain's mind went to his family, his children back on Earth, and he wondered if they would ever know the true cost of his mission. Would they understand what happened here, or would they only hear the stories twisted by the victors who would claim their revenge? Meanwhile, the Vraxians showed no mercy. The silence of space, broken only by the cold efficiency of their attack, their weapons continued to tear into the Mercy until nothing was left but a smoldering wreck floating lifeless in space. The alien forces moved away, leaving only devastation in their wake. Their message was clear: there was no room in this galaxy for weakness, no space for mercy, and no quarter for those who stood in their way. The galaxy held its breath, and across the stars, the news spread. Earth's people could not understand why such an attack had happened, why their medical ship had been targeted, why their hope for peace had been destroyed. But one thing became painfully clear: Earth would not be able to turn a blind eye to this attack. It would be forced to respond, and the galaxy would soon learn that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The news of the attack on the Mercy spread like wildfire across the galaxy, each broadcast bringing a fresh wave of shock and disbelief. Humanity had always been seen as a species of peacekeepers and diplomats willing to offer aid and support to those in need, but now that very image was shattered as Earth's most cherished humanitarian symbol had been destroyed in a single brutal assault. The airwaves were flooded with stories of the wreckage of the Mercy drifting lifelessly through space. Entire colonies mourned the loss of the innocent lives aboard, and Earth itself was plunged into a state of national grief and fury. In every city across Earth, from the bustling metropolis of New York to the quiet hills of the Scottish Highlands, the response was overwhelming. It began as whispers in the corners of coffee shops and street corners, but soon it turned into something much larger. It was a collective cry, a demand for justice, a call for action from every corner of the Earth. Governments were overwhelmed by the rising tide of anger and frustration. As citizens voiced their demand for retribution, they wanted the perpetrators brought to justice. They wanted to see the Vraxians pay for what they had done to their people. Inside the walls of Earth's council chamber, The leaders sat in silence, their minds racing as the weight of their decision loomed large on them. They had long ago shifted away from militarization, focusing instead on diplomacy and humanitarian efforts. But the attack on the Mercy could not be ignored for long. The shock was still fresh, the grief was raw, and the fury of the people was building with every passing hour in private. Some of the counselors had already come to a grim conclusion, but the decision was not so simple. They knew the consequences of war all too well, the losses, the sacrifices, the scars that could never be healed. The debate raged on. Some argued for restraint to send a message of peace, that Earth would not become like those who took violent action at the slightest provocation. But others argued the opposite. How could Earth turn the other cheek after such an atrocity? How could they allow such an attack to go unanswered? The very idea of weakness in the face of aggression was unbearable to them. And as they looked out at the faces of Earth's citizens through news feeds and public forums, it was clear that the majority agreed they wanted to see Earth's fleet mobilize. They wanted action, and they wanted it now. Finally, after hours of tense deliberation, the decision was made. Earth would respond to the Vraxians' assault, but not with a simple gesture or with words alone. Earth would unleash its war fleet, an armada that had long been hidden away in secret facilities. Since the last great conflict, Earth's military had grown dormant, their ships forgotten and left to gather dust. But now the fleets would awaken. Now they would rise again. The engines of war that had lain dormant for generations would roar to life once more. Across the planet, military bases were activated, emergency signals were sent, and every resource was devoted to the preparation of Earth's fleets. The response would be swift and decisive. The call had gone out to the commanders who had led Earth's forces through previous wars, many of whom had retired from active duty. But now they would return from the quiet of civilian life to lead Earth's charge into a war they had hoped would never come. They had long since hoped Earth would never need to fight again, but the Vraxians had forced their hand, and now humanity would make its response known. The first signs of action came swiftly as Earth's war fleet began to stir from its long dormancy. The vast, hidden shipyards scattered across Earth's moon, and its colonies were activated one by one, bringing ancient vessels back to life. These ships were relics from a time when humanity had faced the brutality of other civilizations, a time when Earth was a warrior among the stars. Its once mighty fleet had been reduced to a skeleton force over the years, but now, with every moment, it was being revitalized. The warships that had sat in silence for decades began to hum with energy, their systems rebooting, weapons reactivating, and shields coming online again. The sight was nothing short of awe-inspiring. The ships that once symbolized Earth's strength had been forgotten by most of its people, their purpose buried in history books and classified files. But now, as the great battleships and dreadnoughts emerged from the depths of the moon's craters and massive hangars, Earth's citizens felt a sudden rush of pride. A new sense of unity and determination spread across the planet. It was a sight few could have imagined. The fleet that would be their defenders was not some modern, shiny armada with the latest technology. It was the fleet of their ancestors, aged, battered, yet incredibly powerful. These vessels had stood the test of time and would now stand in defense of Earth's future. Commanders were summoned from every corner of the Federation. Many were veterans of wars long past. Some had fought in distant systems, where the darkness of space had consumed entire fleets. Others had once been part of Earth's peacekeeping forces and had retired after decades of serving in a galaxy that had grown increasingly peaceful. But the destruction of the Mercy had shaken them all to their core. This was no longer a time for diplomacy or for appeasement. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity would not tolerate the destruction of its own. The leaders of Earth's military knew the Vraxians were a serious threat. Their fleet was formidable, their tactics brutal, but humanity was not a race to back down in the face of aggression. The Vraxians had made a grave mistake by underestimating Earth's ability to respond. This was no longer a question of just striking back. It was a question of survival and vengeance. The Mercy of Earth's previous existence would no longer hold sway. In the vast control rooms and command centers that oversaw the revival of the fleet, Officers worked tirelessly to prepare the ships for battle. These were not just military vessels. They were symbols of Earth's resilience and spirit. The old warships were updated with new systems, but retained their original strength and firepower. Those who worked on them saw it not as maintenance, but as a sacred duty to honor the fallen and prepare for the war that was to come. Every officer knew they had to act quickly if they were to stop the Vraxians before they could strike again. As Earth's military forces gathered in the heart of its fleet control, a single directive was given to all commanders and crews: Avengers of the Mercy, rise. Across Earth, people gathered in masses to watch the progress of their fleet's rebirth. News feeds broadcasted the ship's launches, and across the planet, the message was clear: Earth would not bow to invaders. It would not cower in the face of cruelty. The fleet was ready, and it was about to leave the safety of its homeworld and face down the enemy that dared to strike first. The call for justice had been heard across the stars. Earth had mobilized, and humanity's response was as inevitable as the rise of a new dawn for the galaxy. As Earth's war fleet surged into space, the atmosphere of anticipation grew palpable. Even in the quiet corners of the planet, the once dormant engines of Earth's mighty ships now roared with the power of renewed purpose. Their course was set for the contested borders where the Vraxian threat had originated, but the journey was not one of mere distance. It was a journey into the heart of the unknown, into a galactic theater where every moment could be their last. Earth's fleet had to be ready for what lay ahead, for the Vraxians were not an enemy to be taken lightly. The command center aboard the flagship Eagle's Pride was a hive of activity as officers and commanders scrambled to finalize their strategies. The plan was clear: they would strike the Vraxian forces before they could regroup or fortify any of their positions. The Vraxian attack on the Mercy had been swift and brutal, and Earth's leadership knew they had to return the favor with equal ferocity. The fleet would not wait to be attacked again. They would take the fight directly to the heart of the Vraxian war machine. As the fleet entered the outer reaches of Vraxian space, the first signs of enemy activity appeared on their sensors. The Vraxian warships were already on the move. Their vessels, large and intimidating, formed into a battle group ready to confront the incoming humans. At first, the Vraxians held their ground, confident in their numbers and weaponry. They assumed that Earth's outdated fleet would be an easy target. What they didn't account for was the ferocity and determination that burned in the hearts of every crew member aboard Earth's ships. They had seen what had happened to the Mercy, and they would not rest until the Vraxians paid for it. The first shots were fired when Earth's ships moved into engagement range. Massive beams of energy lit up the darkness of space. As the fleets clashed, the Vraxians responded with overwhelming firepower. Their warships fired upon Earth's fleet with deadly accuracy, but Earth's forces were not as easy to hit as the Vraxians had assumed. Earth's commanders knew how to maneuver through the chaos, how to use the environment of space to their advantage. The older warships were nimble, quick to turn and pivot, even as the Vraxians unleashed their most advanced weaponry. At the same time, Earth's fleet deployed its own array of deadly countermeasures and counterattacks in a series of well-coordinated moves that took the Vraxians by surprise. Despite their superior technology, the Vraxians were struggling to land effective blows. The smaller, more agile ships of Earth's fleet darted around the larger Vraxian dreadnoughts, launching missile barrages and swarming their massive targets with relentless attacks. The battle was fast-paced, chaotic, and filled with the kinds of unpredictable maneuvers only humans could pull off as they combined their advanced technology with an ingenuity born of generations of surviving brutal wars. The Vraxians, who had initially thought they would crush the humans, were now realizing they had underestimated the resolve and tactics of Earth's forces. Earth's fleet was turning the tide with every strike they'd made. The Vraxians were beginning to falter as their formations grew less coordinated, and their leadership started to panic. Earth's commanders were quick to exploit the cracks in their enemy's strategy, hitting key weak points, disabling Vraxian weapons, and causing critical damage to their ships. As the battle raged on, the once overconfident Vraxians found themselves on the defensive, now outmatched by the human fleet's speed, precision, and sheer determination. The message was clear: Earth was no longer the peaceful species it had once been. Earth was fighting for its survival, and it would use every weapon at its disposal to ensure victory. The Vraxians would pay for their attack on the Mercy, and humanity would make sure they never made the mistake of underestimating Earth again. With every passing moment, Earth's war fleet gained ground, and the Vraxians, for the first time, began to feel the weight of their aggression come crashing down upon them. As the battle continued to rage, Earth's fleet began to assert its dominance, pushing the Vraxian forces further and further into retreat. The Vraxians, once brimming with arrogance and confidence, now found themselves scrambling to maintain control of the situation. Their advanced weaponry and overwhelming numbers had failed to deliver the victory they had expected. They had underestimated the humans, and now it was clear that Earth's fleet was not simply surviving. It was adapting, evolving, and fighting with a ferocity that the Vraxians could not comprehend. The human fleet, despite being comprised of older ships, was proving to be more than a match for the Vraxian forces. The sheer unpredictability of Earth's tactics was throwing the Vraxians off balance. They were used to fighting enemies who adhered to more conventional methods of warfare, who followed predictable patterns. But humans were different. Earth's fleet had become a swirling, chaotic force, unpredictable and relentless. Every ship, whether it was an ancient dreadnought or a newly modified fighter, moved with a sense of purpose and strategy that the Vraxians simply couldn't anticipate. It was human ingenuity at its finest, the ability to adapt and innovate in the heat of battle, to turn the tables when all seemed lost. One of the key turning points in the battle came when Earth's fleet executed a series of precise, lightning-fast strikes on Vraxian supply lines. The Vraxians relied heavily on their supply ships to keep their forces well-armed and well-fed, but Earth's ships, moving with stealth and precision, disabled several of these critical vessels, throwing the Vraxian forces into disarray. With their supplies cut off, the Vraxians were forced to fight on fumes, their ships struggling to maintain their firepower and defensive capabilities. It was a brilliant tactic, one that showcased the intelligence and resourcefulness of humanity. Earth's fleet had always been a fleet of survivors, of soldiers who had fought in the trenches of history's many wars and emerged stronger for it. They understood that a well-timed strike could cripple an enemy far more effectively than sheer force alone. The Vraxians, caught off guard, were forced into a defensive posture they had not anticipated. Their massive dreadnoughts, once thought to be invincible, were now vulnerable to Earth's swarm of agile, fast-moving fighters. Even in the face of such adversity, the Vraxians fought back with everything they had. Their ships unleashed a storm of firepower, trying desperately to regain control of the situation. But for every shot they fired, Earth's fleet answered back with equal intensity. The human ships, despite being slower and more aged, had one advantage that no Vraxian warship could match: their crews. Humans fought with a sense of urgency, a sense of survival that no amount of firepower could extinguish. They were not just fighting for victory. They were fighting for their home, for their families, for the very survival of their species. This was more than a battle for territory. It was a battle for their future. As the battle pressed on, it became clear that the Vraxians were losing their grip on the fight. Their ships were breaking apart, their formations crumbling, and their leadership in disarray. Earth's fleet, while battered and scarred, was still standing strong. The tide had turned in favor of humanity, and there was no turning back. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, the Vraxians began to feel the weight of their own mistakes. They had struck the Mercy, thinking Earth would be an easy target, but now they were discovering the true power of humanity. And as Earth's fleet pressed forward, pushing deeper into Vraxian space, the message was clear to the galaxy. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The Mercy had been avenged, and Earth was no longer a passive observer in the galaxy's wars. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Vraxians would pay the price for their aggression, and Earth's war fleet was determined to make sure of it. As Earth's fleet pressed deeper into Vraxian-controlled space, the momentum of the battle shifted irreversibly. The once imposing Vraxian forces, which had dominated the battlefield with their overwhelming numbers and advanced technology, were now reeling from a series of decisive blows. Their strategic command structure, once feared for its precision, began to crumble under the relentless pressure of Earth's tactical brilliance. The Vraxians had underestimated humanity, and the consequences were unfolding before them. Earth's fleet had not only destroyed vital supply lines, but also expertly exploited weaknesses in the Vraxian defensive formations. Earth's commanders knew their ships inside and out. They understood that their older models, despite being less agile or technologically advanced, were built to endure and to outlast. The Vraxians, on the other hand, had designed their ships to overpower and intimidate, but their designs were now proving their own downfall. Their massive dreadnoughts were powerful but slow, and their fighters, though numerous, lacked the same adaptability and cunning that Earth's pilots had honed over decades of unpredictable conflict. The turning point came when Earth's fleet managed to breach the heart of the Vraxian defense, a heavily fortified orbital station deep within Vraxian space. The station was a critical nerve center for the Vraxian war effort, controlling the flow of reinforcements and strategic coordination across the front lines. Earth's intelligence network had identified this station as the key to the Vraxian war machine, and the decision was made to strike it with everything they had. The plan was audacious, relying on a coordinated assault from multiple fronts. The human fleet would split into several small, nimble strike groups, each one designed to punch through the Vraxian defenses at key weak points. At first, the Vraxians had dismissed such a strategy, believing their superior firepower would easily neutralize these small groups. But they underestimated the speed and precision of Earth's attacks. The strike groups, led by veteran commanders, moved with lightning speed, using the very vastness of space as their weapon. They darted through asteroid fields, used solar flares as cover, and unleashed targeted EMP bursts that crippled Vraxian sensor arrays. For the Vraxians, it was like fighting an invisible enemy, one that could appear from anywhere and vanish just as quickly. The chaos was overwhelming. Vraxian warships, once formidable in their own right, began to falter as their supply chains were severed, their communications scrambled, and their leadership disorganized. It was no longer just a battle of firepower. It was a battle of wills, and humanity's will to survive, to protect their home, was stronger than ever. Earth's forces had turned the Vraxian arrogance against them, using their own overconfidence to exploit every vulnerability. Amidst the turmoil, the most significant blow came when Earth's special operations teams infiltrated the Vraxian orbital station. They bypassed security with surgical precision, planting explosives at the heart of the station's central command. The blast, when it detonated, sent shockwaves through the Vraxian fleet. The Vraxians had relied on this station for coordination, and now it was gone, obliterated in a single devastating strike. Without it, their forces lost all semblance of order. The Vraxians were now operating in a state of panic, unsure of where to strike next or how to counter Earth's relentless advance. On the battlefield, Earth's fleet did not relent. Every ship, every pilot, every crew member was focused on one goal: ensuring the destruction of the Vraxian war effort. The Vraxians, already weakened by the loss of their command center, began to retreat. Their massive dreadnoughts turned and fled, attempting to regroup, but Earth's forces were too swift, too relentless. Fighters darted in and out of the Vraxian formations, picking off stragglers, while Earth's heavier ships pushed forward, picking off the largest targets with precision. For the first time, the Vraxians were no longer on the offensive. Earth's fleet had not only avenged the mercy, they had now shattered the very foundation of the Vraxian Empire's military. As Earth's fleet advanced further into Vraxian space, the galaxy took note. The Vraxians, once thought to be an unstoppable force, were crumbling before the might of humanity. The message was clear: Earth had risen from the ashes of the Mercy's destruction and had become a force capable of challenging even the most powerful empires in the galaxy. And the Vraxians would not be the last to feel the sting of humanity's wrath. The retreat of the Vraxian fleet marked the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's place in the galaxy. The Vraxians, once thought to be an unstoppable force, were now reeling from the savage assault they had endured. They had underestimated Earth, and the consequences of that miscalculation were now evident. But Earth's fleet had not yet delivered the final blow. The heart of the Vraxian Empire, the capital planet Vraxia itself, remained unscathed, a symbol of the Vraxian resolve and the core of their military might. If Earth was to secure its victory and prevent future attacks, it would need to finish what it had started. As Earth's fleet pushed deeper into Vraxian space, it became clear that the Vraxians were not going to surrender easily. Their pride would not allow it. Despite the devastating losses they had suffered, their fleet remained formidable, albeit disorganized, and on the brink of collapse. But the Vraxian leadership was determined to make one final stand. Their last hope rested on the defenses of Vraxia, where they believed they could regroup and mount a counteroffensive against Earth's fleet. They were wrong. Inside Earth's command center, the High Command had anticipated the Vraxian desperation. They knew that the Vraxians would never simply retreat into the shadows. They would fight to the last, holding onto their capital with everything they had left. And so, Earth's fleet prepared for the final battle. Every ship, from the aging warships to the cutting-edge fighters, was aligned in a single unified force. The objective was clear. Vraxia had to fall. The fleet moved toward the heart of Vraxian space, where Vraxia orbited its sun, its cities gleaming with the promise of defiance. The sight of the planet was a stark reminder of everything that had been lost, of the mercy, of innocent lives, of Earth's innocence before this war. Humanity's resolve burned even brighter as they neared the Vraxian stronghold. The crews aboard every ship knew that this would not be just another battle. It would be the end of the conflict, one way or another. As Earth's fleet entered orbit around Vraxia, the Vraxians mounted a desperate defense. Their remaining warships gathered in a final, concentrated formation, creating an impenetrable wall of firepower. The Vraxians were determined to protect their homeworld at all costs, to preserve the last vestiges of their empire. But they could not match the unity and purpose of Earth's fleet. Humanity was fighting for its future, for its very existence in the galaxy. The Vraxians were fighting to preserve a legacy of conquest that had already begun to crumble. The battle erupted in a storm of energy beams and missile barrages, the sky above Vraxia turning into a chaotic battlefield. The Vraxians threw everything they had into the fight, launching waves of fighters, attempting to overwhelm Earth's ships with sheer numbers. But Earth's commanders had anticipated this strategy. Their fleet had adapted to the Vraxian tactics over the course of the war. Now they were using their superior maneuverability, their better knowledge of the battlefield, and their strategic ingenuity to turn the tide. One by one, Vraxian ships began to fall. The agile fighters darted in, slipping past the heavier Vraxian vessels to strike at their weak points. Earth's warships, though older, unleashed their heavy firepower, shredding through the Vraxian defenses. The battle was brutal, every ship fighting to stay in the fight, every pilot pushing their skills to the limit. The Vraxians, desperate to save their planet, began to falter. Their tactics grew sloppy, their formation disjointed. Earth's forces exploited every crack in their defenses, every opportunity to strike. At the heart of the battle, Earth's flagship, the Eagle's Pride, led the charge, its massive guns pounding the Vraxian capital's orbital defense platforms. The explosions lit up the dark expanse of space as Earth's ships converged on the Vraxian capital, shattering their last line of defense. The once proud Vraxian fleet was now a wreck, their ships drifting in the aftermath of Earth's relentless assault. And then, in a final, devastating move, Earth's fleet launched a wave of long-range missiles, aimed directly at Vraxia's planetary shield generators. The missiles tore through the atmosphere, bypassing the last remnants of the Vraxian defense. The planet's shield shattered in a brilliant explosion, and the path was clear. Earth had won. As the final Vraxian ship fell from the skies above Vraxia, Earth's fleet stood victorious. The Vraxian Empire, once a fearsome presence in the galaxy, was no more. The battle for Vraxia had been won, and with it, Earth had not only avenged the Mercy but had secured its place as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. The Vraxians had paid the price for their aggression, and humanity had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they would not be underestimated again. The final, resounding silence that followed the destruction of Vraxia's defenses echoed through space. The once great Vraxian Empire had crumbled in the face of Earth's might and determination. The victory, while monumental, felt bittersweet to the survivors of Earth's fleet. The battle had been brutal, the losses heavy on both sides, but the message was clear. Humanity had emerged victorious, and the galaxy had witnessed what happened when Earth's resolve was tested. On Earth, the atmosphere was electric with a mix of relief, sorrow, and pride. News of the fall of Vraxia spread quickly, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the people of Earth could breathe a collective sigh of relief. The war, though costly, had been won. The Mercy had been avenged, and humanity had sent a message to the galaxy that would reverberate for generations. No longer would they be seen as a species of peacekeepers to be taken for granted. Humanity had shown that it would fight for its own, that it would protect what it held dear, and that no one would stand in its way. In the wake of the victory, the leaders of Earth convened in the grand chambers of Earth's Council, the heart of global governance. The celebration was tempered by the weight of their decisions, the future now uncertain. With the fall of the Vraxian Empire, a power vacuum had been created, and many feared that other, more hostile factions would now move to take advantage of the shift in galactic power. The galaxy, once again, seemed on the edge of uncertainty. But the leaders knew one thing: Earth would not cower in fear. They had faced a great challenge, and they had overcome it. The fleet returned home to Earth's orbit, where it was met with a hero's welcome. Every ship, every soldier, every officer was greeted as a symbol of humanity's victory, of resilience, and of sacrifice. There were speeches, ceremonies, and celebrations, but behind the applause lay a somber recognition of the cost of war. Families mourned the loss of loved ones, children who would never grow up, parents who would never return home. The scars of war would not be easily healed. Yet, as Earth looked to the future, they did so with the knowledge that they had the strength to rebuild and to protect what they had fought so hard for. In the months that followed, Earth began to rebuild its fleet, not out of a thirst for power, but out of necessity. The galaxy had seen humanity's resolve, and while some hoped for peace, many knew that the same forces who had once sought to destroy Earth might one day rise again. Earth's military, now a symbol of both strength and resilience, would be prepared for whatever the future held. The Vraxian Empire, now a distant memory, left a lingering mark on the galaxy. Their technology, their culture, their once great military strategies, these would be studied by Earth's scholars for generations. Yet Earth had learned a valuable lesson. It was no longer just a player in the galaxy. It was a force in its own right. The Mercy had been destroyed, but in its place had risen a new humanity, one capable of standing toe-to-toe with the greatest powers the galaxy had ever known. The final chapter of the Vraxian War had been written, but the story of humanity's place in the stars was just beginning. Earth's legacy would now be etched in the annals of galactic history, not as a passive observer, but as a power to be respected and feared. Humanity had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. And now, as the stars shone brightly above, Earth stood ready for whatever the future held, unbroken, unbowed, and ready to face the next challenge head-on.